In the summer of 2014, a team of archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute was conducting routine excavation work in a limestone quarry outside the ancient city of Baalbek, Lebanon. They were not looking for anything new. They were measuring and documenting a stone that had been known about for over a century, a massive monolith called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a 1,000-ton block that had been sitting in that quarry since antiquity. Their job was to study quarrying techniques to figure out how ancient builders had cut stone on this scale. Standard academic work, straightforward measurements. Then, while excavating the soil beneath and beside the pregnant woman's stone, the team uncovered something that was not supposed to be there. Another monolith. Buried, hidden under meters of accumulated sediment, unseen and unknown for thousands of years. When they measured it, the numbers were staggering. 19.6 meters long, 6 meters wide, at least 5.5 meters high. Its estimated weight was 1,650 tons. That makes it the single largest stone block ever carved by human hands in all of recorded history. Heavier than 4 fully loaded Boeing 747 jets. Heavier than the Statue of Liberty. And it had been sitting there, buried, for so long that no one in the modern world even knew it existed. The German Archaeological Institute published their findings quietly. There was no press conference, no international media blitz, just an academic report. The world barely noticed because the discovery raised a question that nobody seemed eager to answer. If this was the largest stone ever quarried, and it lay buried under a stone that itself was abandoned and never used, who carved it? When did they carve it? And why does nobody want to talk about it? To understand why that question matters, you need to understand what most people think Baalbek is versus what it actually is. The version of Baalbek in your history textbook is about 2,000 years old. What scientists have been quietly finding beneath it is closer to 11,000. The gap between those two numbers contains a secret that the Romans, the Greeks, the Phoenicians, and possibly civilizations we do not even have names for tried to build over, bury, and forget. The textbook version goes like this. Baalbek is a Roman temple complex in Lebanon's Beqaa Valley, about 86 kilometers northeast of Beirut. The Romans called it Heliopolis, City of the Sun, and between the 1st and the 3rd centuries Common Era, they turned it into one of the largest religious sanctuaries in their entire empire. The Temple of Jupiter measured roughly 88 by 48 meters, and it was originally surrounded by 54 columns standing 20 meters tall. Only 6 of those columns survive, and they are still the most iconic image in Lebanon. On the banknotes, on the stamps, on every postcard the country has ever printed. The Temple of Bacchus, which still stands in remarkable condition, is larger than the Parthenon. Its interior doorways are so massive that a grown adult standing in the frame looks roughly the size of an action figure. Genuinely spectacular Roman architecture. But here is the first crack in the official story. Baalbek sits over 2,200 kilometers from Rome, 1,400 miles. The Romans had grand temples in Rome itself, in Athens and Ephesus, in the beating heart of their empire. Why build your single most ambitious temple complex in a remote Lebanese valley? The answer every archaeologist agrees on is that something was already here. Something that had been attracting worship for thousands of years before the first Roman ever set foot in the Beqaa. That something is the real mystery. The foundation beneath the Temple of Jupiter consists of a platform called the Grand Terrace. The lower courses of this platform are made of enormous limestone blocks. 27 of them are visible at the base, 9 along the north side, 9 along the south, and 6 along the west. Each one ranges from 30 to 33 feet long, 14 feet high, and 10 feet deep. Each one weighs approximately 450 tons. That is not Roman standard. That is not Roman anything. The largest stones the Romans are known to have used elsewhere in their empire top out at around 300 tons, and those are considered exceptional. These 450-ton foundation blocks are treated as footnotes, but they are not even the biggest stones. On the western wall, sitting on top of those foundation blocks, are 3 monoliths called the trilithon. They are 19 meters long each, 4.2 meters high, and 3.6 meters thick. Each weighs 800 tons apiece. Let that land for a second. Each one weighs roughly the equivalent of 260 family cars compressed into a single limestone block, and they are perched 7 meters off the ground, fitted together so precisely you cannot slide a razor blade between the joints. No mortar, no adhesive, just raw precision at a scale that makes modern structural engineers quietly nervous when you ask them to explain how it was done. The French architect Jean-Pierre Adam calculated in 1977 that moving a single 800-ton trilithon block would require around 500 workers operating 40 capstans on roller systems, hauling it 900 meters from the quarry on a downhill gradient. That is the one gift physics gives you here. The quarry is uphill, but controlling 800 tons rolling downhill on Bronze Age rollers is not exactly a relaxing afternoon either. Now do that 3 times for the trilithon, 27 more times for the foundation course. Account for the cutting, shaping, precision fitting. You are looking at an engineering project that would make a modern project manager cry into his spreadsheet. And they did it with hand tools. Now here is what should bother you. The Romans were among the most meticulous record keepers in the ancient world. They documented their construction projects obsessively. We have Roman records for roads, aqueducts, bridges, bathhouses, temples across 3 continents. They even left graffiti. A stonemason working on one of the columns of the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek carved the date August 2nd, 60 AD into his column. We know that detail. We know the date a single worker scratched into his column over 2,000 years ago. And yet there is not one word, not one inscription, not one line in any Roman text anywhere that describes how or when the trilithon was quarried, transported, or placed. Not one. The greatest engineering feat at the most spectacular temple in the Roman Empire, and the Romans simply forgot to mention it. Or alternatively, they did not mention it because they did not build it. And that is where things start to get very interesting. Because when you actually look at the stonework of the Grand Terrace with an engineer's eye rather than a tourist's, you can see at least 2, possibly 3, distinct construction styles layered on top of each other. The upper portions are obviously Roman. The decorative capitals, the ornamental friezes, the column drums, all classic Roman imperial craftsmanship. Nobody disputes that. But the megalithic foundation blocks below display completely different cutting techniques, different jointing methods, different tool marks, and critically, different weathering patterns. The stones at the bottom are measurably more eroded, more worn, more aged than the Roman stones above them. If you have ever looked at a building where a new extension meets old original brick, you know exactly what this looks like. 2 different eras of construction, visible to the naked eye, stacked on top of each other. The Romans built a magnificent temple, but they built it on top of a platform that was already there. And whoever constructed that platform was working with stone on a scale that the Romans, for all their genius, never attempted anywhere else in their empire. This is where the story starts peeling apart layer by layer, literally. Archaeologist Daniel Lohmann of the German Archaeological Institute spent years studying the construction history of the Jupiter Sanctuary and identified what he calls Podium 1, an earlier foundation structure hidden beneath the Roman construction. The masonry techniques of this pre-Roman layer are strikingly similar to those King Herod the Great used when he built the Temple Mount retaining walls in Jerusalem around 20 BCE. Same alternating block courses, same tool marks, same construction logic. The largest Herodian stone in Jerusalem weighs 570 tons. 2 sites 1,000 miles apart, built using the same hands or at least the same school of thought. Herod was known to fund monumental construction in cities across the eastern Mediterranean, including Berytus, which governed Baalbek at the time. The idea that he invested in this site fits his character perfectly. He was a man who built on an almost pathological scale to cement his legacy. But even Herod was building on top of something older. The Bible mentions a city called Baalath that was refortified by King Solomon around 970 BCE. Many scholars identify Baalath with Baalbek. If that identification is correct, it means the site was already considered significant enough for a king to invest in fortifying it 3,000 years ago. Which raises the obvious question, significant because of what? What was already there? The answer came from an unexpected place, and it was barely reported at the time. During routine cleaning at the edge of the Temple of Jupiter platform, workers opened a deep trench that had never been properly excavated. This was not a major dig. It was maintenance work, the archaeological equivalent of sweeping behind the furniture. When archaeologists examined what came out of that trench, they found something that fundamentally changed the timeline of Baalbek. Stone tools, flint blades, organic remains, artifacts identified as belonging to the Pre-Pottery Neolithic B period. That places human activity at this specific site to 9000 BCE. Not 900, not 2000, 9000. That is roughly 11,000 years ago, contemporary with Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and contemporary with some of the oldest known permanent settlements on Earth. Think about what that means. 11,000 years ago, there were no cities anywhere on Earth. Writing would not be invented for another 6,000 years. The wheel was still millennia away. The Beqaa Valley was wetter and cooler, dotted with some of the first Neolithic farming communities in human history, people experimenting with cultivating wild grains for the first time. On this particular hilltop, people were already settled, already building, already doing something that kept them coming back to this exact location generation after generation, for thousands of years before the first Bronze Age civilization rose in the region. Further excavation confirmed it. The tell beneath the Temple of Jupiter shows evidence of nearly continuous human habitation stretching back at least 9,000 years, possibly 11,000. Layer upon layer, one culture building on the ruins of the one before, in an unbroken chain from the Neolithic to the Phoenicians, to the Greeks, to the Romans. Ceramic analysis shows continuous pottery sequences linking one period to the next without gaps. People never left this hilltop, not during droughts, not during wars, not during the collapse of entire civilizations around them. Whatever was here, it was important enough to hold on to through everything history could throw at it. This is published archaeological data from the German Archaeological Institute and the Lebanese Department of Antiquities, sitting in academic journals that almost nobody outside of archaeology reads. The public gets the Roman temples. Architecture students get the trilithon. Conspiracy channels get the alien landing pad theories. Almost nobody talks about the Neolithic settlement that proves this site was considered sacred 7,000 years before the Roman Empire existed. So let us think about what this means. The Romans arrived at Baalbek around the 1st century BCE. They found a site that had already been sacred for at least 7,000 years. They did what empires do. They built their temples on top of it, incorporating the massive pre-existing platform into their design because it was already there, already stable, and already monumental in scale. Before them, the same thing happened. The Hellenistic Greeks renamed the site Heliopolis and likely built upon earlier foundations. Before them, the Phoenicians worshipped Baal here and may have expanded whatever they found. Before them, Bronze Age settlements occupied the mound. And before even those, Neolithic people lived on this hilltop 11,000 years ago. Each civilization found this place, recognized it as important, and built on top of what was already there. Nobody started from scratch. Everyone inherited. The Romans used the megalithic platform as their foundation. The Greeks before them renamed an already sacred site. The Phoenicians worshipped Baal at a location that was holy long before their culture existed. The name Baalbek itself, meaning Lord of the Beqaa Valley, likely dates to the Canaanite period. This means the divine association with this site is older than the alphabet used to write it down. The most striking detail is that every civilization that arrived at Baalbek treated the pre-existing structures not as obstacles to tear down, but as foundations to build upon. That is unusual. Conquerors typically destroy what came before to assert dominance. At Baalbek, everyone, Canaanites, Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans, looked at what was already there and decided the smartest move was to keep it. Whatever this place meant, it was powerful enough to survive cultural replacement after cultural replacement intact for 11,000 years. Now let us go back to the quarry, because the quarry is where this story takes its strangest turn. 900 meters from the temple complex, 3 enormous monoliths sit in a limestone quarry. The stone of the pregnant woman, 1,000 tons, has been known for centuries. Its name comes from a legend that a pregnant woman convinced the people of Baalbek she knew the secret to moving it if only they would feed her until she gave birth. The Stone of the South, rediscovered in the 1990s, weighs 1,242 tons, heavier than the International Space Station. And the Forgotten Stone, discovered in 2014 beneath both of them, weighs 1,650 tons. All 3 are partially finished. All 3 were abandoned mid-project, still attached to bedrock. The conventional explanation is that the Romans quarried them, found them too large or flawed, and walked away. Perfectly reasonable. But Graham Hancock raised a point worth chewing on. If the Romans carved these and decided they were unusable, why not slice them into smaller blocks? Romans recycled everything. Leaving a 1,000-ton limestone block to rot was not their style. That would be like scrapping a brand new aircraft carrier because you did not like the paint color. Hancock's alternative is simple. The Romans never knew these quarry stones existed. They had been buried under sediment for millennia before Rome arrived, quarried by someone else entirely. Speculation, sure, but the Forgotten Stone was literally buried and unknown until 2014. Stones at this quarry demonstrably do get lost. It has happened once in our lifetime. Who says it did not happen before? Now step back and look at the full picture. A hilltop in Lebanon, inhabited continuously for 11,000 years. A megalithic platform made of 450-ton blocks that nobody claims credit for. 3 trilithon stones placed with millimeter precision, undocumented by the civilization supposedly responsible. A quarry with 3 unfinished monoliths up to 1,650 tons, one of which was buried and unknown until a decade ago. A pre-Roman foundation layer with masonry matching a site 1,000 miles away in Jerusalem. And beneath all of it, a Neolithic settlement dating to 9,000 BCE that most people have never heard of. Every time someone digs deeper at Baalbek, they find something older, something bigger, something harder to explain. The Romans built on top of a Hellenistic structure. The Hellenistic Greeks built on top of a Phoenician sanctuary. The Phoenicians built on top of a Bronze Age settlement. The Bronze Age settlement was built on top of a Neolithic occupation layer. That Neolithic layer sits directly on bedrock. Or does it? Nobody actually knows. The full extent of the Grand Terrace has never been completely excavated. There are sections of the platform foundation that no archaeologist has ever reached. The 27 visible foundation blocks may be just the upper course of something deeper. Whether additional layers of megalithic stonework exist beneath them, or whether they rest directly on natural rock, is genuinely unknown, because no excavation has ever gone that far down. Not the German expedition of 1898, not the French excavations of the mid-20th century, not any investigation since. The deepest parts of the Grand Terrace are as unexplored as the day the first stone was laid on top of them. And there is a practical reason nobody has dug deeper. Baalbek is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You cannot simply jackhammer through a Roman temple foundation to see what is under it. The very thing that makes Baalbek precious, 11,000 years of layered construction, is also the thing that makes it nearly impossible to investigate. Every layer you want to study is buried beneath a layer that is also protected. You would have to dismantle a world treasure to understand it. And so the deepest secrets stay exactly where they are, locked under stone that nobody is allowed to move. This matters because every time someone has looked deeper at Baalbek, they found something they did not expect. In 1898, the Germans found nothing pre-Roman and concluded the site started with Rome. Wrong. Later digs found Persian artifacts, then Bronze Age settlements, then Neolithic layers pushing to 9,000 BCE. Nobody predicted any of it. Each discovery forced a complete rewrite. Each one extended the timeline by thousands of years, and at no point has anyone proven they have reached the bottom. The assumption that we have is exactly that. An assumption, not a conclusion. just the place where we stopped digging. The site has been continuously occupied for 11,000 years. It has been sacred for at least that long, and we have examined perhaps a fraction of its total structure. The question is not whether there is more to find. The question is how deep it goes and whether we have the will to find out. Baalbek is not alone. The surrounding Beqaa Valley is scattered with prehistoric tells and megalithic sites that have never been properly excavated. If Baalbek was the center, the most sacred site in the region, what was the network around it? And what connected all of these places to one hilltop that humans have refused to leave for over 100 centuries? Local legends have their own answer. Medieval Arabic sources attribute the original construction to Solomon, or to a race of giants who lived before the biblical flood. Other traditions blame the jinn, supernatural beings who were supposedly tasked with the work, but abandoned it. Every version of every legend shares one telling detail. Nobody takes credit. Everyone assumes the stones were put there by someone else in a time before memory. Even mythology throws up its hands at Baalbek. That is the real secret of Baalbek. Not that the Romans built something spectacular, they absolutely did, but that they built it on top of something they did not understand any better than we do. Something that was already ancient when Julius Caesar was born. Something that was already sacred when the first Phoenician traders arrived in the Beqaa Valley. Something that may have been standing on that hilltop when Neolithic farmers were still learning to plant wheat in the fields below. Scientists in Lebanon quietly discovered a stone weighing 1,650 tons that had been buried and forgotten for millennia. But that stone is just the latest in a pattern that stretches back 11,000 years. Every generation at Baalbek has found something the previous generation missed. Every excavation has pushed the timeline deeper. Every layer uncovered reveals that the one beneath it is older, larger, and harder to explain than anyone expected. The quarry still holds stones that were never moved. The platform still holds foundations that have never been fully excavated. And somewhere beneath the oldest known layer of human occupation at Baalbek, beneath even the 9,000-year-old Neolithic settlement, there may be something that no one has reached yet. Something that was already ancient when the first farmers looked up at that hilltop and decided it mattered. Something that has been waiting beneath the city of the sun since before civilization had a name for what it was building. 11,000 years of continuous habitation, 11,000 years of one civilization building on top of the last. And we are still only scratching the surface. What is underneath has been patient for a very long time. It can wait a little longer, but maybe we should not. If you found this fascinating, subscribe to Chronofall for more stories that challenge everything you thought you knew about our past.